Okay, thanks everybody. Welcome to tonight's meeting. This is a branch meeting of the Glasgow City for Solidarity. So welcome, and I can see some well-kent faces but also some new faces here tonight. So welcome to one and all. We're going to start off tonight with a contribution from Tommy Sheridan, and he's going to be presenting the main manifesto commentary. Our conference is next Saturday in Glasgow, the Scottish conference, and so Glasgow as a city has to take a position on certain things, and Tommy's going to outline what some of the main manifesto commitments are going to be that will be presented at the conference next week. So I'll hand over to Tommy.
Thanks very much, Lynn, and thanks very much, comrades, brothers and sisters, for making it along tonight. It's not the most pleasant of evenings, so it's good to see you all here. I think it is fit and proper that we in Solidarity do recognise National Holocaust Memorial Day, and that we have paid our respects in relation to the Holocaust. Sometimes people get a wee bit confused in relation to the development of politics in opposition to what Israel does as a state across the world, and quite clearly and categorically they are now a rogue state, a state that bullies and encourages and spreads terror and breaks all of its international commitments and laws in relation to its continued occupation of Palestine. So we have to all the time in Solidarity and as socialists recognise there is absolutely no contradiction in being against the Holocaust, against fascism, against Nazism, and remembering what happened, not just to the Jews, but to the trade unionists, to the Catholics, to the socialists, to the disabled citizens in relation to the Holocaust. We remember that, we respect that memory, and we give a commitment that we will always fight against fascism and any repeat of the fascist parties that try again to pollute our society. But there is a difference between being against Israel and being against Zionism and being against the Jewish community, being anti-Semitic. Anti-Semitism has nothing to do with being anti-Zionist and anti-Israel. We have to be absolutely clear about that. What Israel has done and continues to do throughout the Middle East is part and parcel of the problems that across our world lead to a conflation of conflict and unfortunately resistance that often is condemned as terrorism. But I do have to say at meetings like this, as I have at meetings all over the country, there has got to be a recognition that if your country was occupied by an unwelcome and invading force, what would you do? What would you do? Would you be someone who accepts that and meekly goes along with that occupying force, or would you be one of those that was involved in the resistance? Because when we're remembering National Holocaust Memorial Day, we also remember groups who took up arms in the French resistance against Nazi occupation. Well, I'm afraid it may not be comfortable the way the media portrays things, but the modern day French resistance is there in the Palestinian youth and men and women who are resisting Israeli occupation, and I think it's important that Solidarity is not blind to those international issues which are important for socialists today. However, the main purpose of our meeting tonight is to discuss the Glasgow Campaign. The Glasgow Campaign to be elected to send socialists to Holyrood to represent the city of Glasgow. We have less than 4 months to the election on May the 5th. What is the platform that we are going to fight those elections on? It is important that when people are being asked to give us their second vote, we're not looking for their constituency vote, we're looking for their second vote. Even that expression is confusing, isn't it? For a lot of people that are involved in politics, what do you mean the second vote, Tommy? What's the second vote? We have to explain, as we did in the course in the run-up to the general election last year, when you only had one vote, that the difference this time around when you go into the ballot box, you go into the polling station, you will be giving 2 ballot papers. 2 ballot papers, not 1, 2. One will be a lilac one, and it will be for your constituency choice. Who it is you want to represent you in the particular constituency that you live in. There will be 9 constituencies in Glasgow. The second ballot paper is a peach ballot paper, and that is for the party that you wish to represent, the region that you live in, not the local area you live in, the region. And for the purposes of this election, Glasgow is a region. Scotland is divided up into 8 regions, each of them with approximately 400,000 electors. And the others, North East Scotland, Mid Scotland, Fife, Lothian, South Scotland, West Scotland, they are all regions, and they will all get a peach paper, and solidarity will be a choice in all of those regions. So we are asking the people of Scotland to give us the peach vote, to give us the second vote, to give us the list vote. And we have to emphasise in meetings like this, time and time again, the electoral system that operates for Holyrood is not first past the post. It is not an electoral system that rewards only those who win more than the nearest candidate, that they win everything. The Holyrood election is what's known as a hybrid election system. It's named after a guy called De Hoyt. De Hoyt was the architect of this electoral system. And what it means is that there is a first past the post element and there is a proportional representation element. The first past the post is the constituency element, the proportional representation element is the second vote. And the De Hoyt system is designed to ensure that if you do well in the first past the post, you won't do well in the list vote. In other words, it evens things out. The whole idea of the Scottish Parliament, original architects, the Scottish Constitutional Convention, the whole idea was never to allow one single party to win a majority. The Scottish Constitutional Convention hoped to ensure that every Scottish Parliament would be a coalition parliament. In 1999 it was a coalition. 2003 it was a coalition. 2007, then I'm afraid that whole idea was thrown up in the air, because rather than a coalition we had a minority government. The SNP governed as a minority. By 2011 the SNP's vote was so large that they actually won a majority of the Parliament. There are 129 MSPs elected, 73 first past the post, 56 on the list. The majority, the magic number is 65. If you can get 65 elected for your party, you've won a majority. The SNP won 69 in that particular election. Here's the rub. Here's the rub. The SNP in 2011 is not the SNP of 2016, because A, the referendum campaign, and B, the general election of last year. What the referendum campaign did and what the general election campaign illustrated was that Scotland is now more divided than ever, and those parties that lined up with the blue Tories, the Lib Dems and the Labour Party, who became the yellow and the red Tories by lining up with the Bitter Together campaign to try and crush the dreams and the hopes and the aspirations of those of us who believe in an independent Scotland. Those parties are now forever out of the trust, out of the circle, particularly of the working class across Scotland. They will never ever be trusted again, and the general election of last year illustrated that, didn't it? When you had 59 seats that were up for grabs for Westminster, 59, and 56 of them went to the SNP because people united behind voting for the SNP as a mark of support for independence and of opposition to austerity. So the SNP of 2011 is much stronger now in 2016. Every opinion poll since last year, and there have been somewhere in the order of 27 different opinion polls. I was looking at the research today. Every one of them has the SNP at a minimum of 49% on the first past the post, and some of them have it as much as 55% first past the post. Every one of those polls predicts that the SNP will win on the first constituency section between 70 and 73 seats. In other words, they will win either all but 3 of the constituency votes, or they're going to win every single one of them. The SNP are going to become the majority government in May on the first past the post section alone. That's the reality. No matter what the SNP hierarchy are going to tell you, that's the reality. The SNP hierarchy are saying, no, we need your both votes. And I can understand some part of why they're saying that, because they don't want to appear to be complacent, they don't want to take things for granted. But the arithmetic, the science, not the arguments of me, the science of the electoral system means, take Glasgow as an example. The number of votes that you get on the peach vote, on the list vote, is divided by the number of seats that you win on the first past the post vote plus 1. Plus 1. So if you win 1 seat, then your vote's divided by 1 plus 1 is divided by 2. What is going to happen in Glasgow is the SNP are going to win 9 constituency seats. They're going to win all of the Glasgow seats. So the votes that they get on the list will be divided by 9 plus 1. What does that mean? That means that 200,000 people in Glasgow, take that as an example, 200,000 people in Glasgow could vote SNP first past the post, SNP list. They'll win all the seats first past the post. But the list vote is divided by 10. So the 200,000 votes becomes, for the purposes of the list vote, 20,000. 20,000. That means that voting for the SNP 1 and 2 becomes not just a wasted vote, but it actually assists the unionist parties. It will allow the unionist parties to maintain a presence in the Scottish Parliament. The Labour Party, the Tory Party, the Lib Dems, they will be able, in a city like Glasgow, where Labour was able to muster somewhere in the region of 150,000 votes in Glasgow in 2011. Well, if they get to 150,000 votes, they'll be able to win virtually all the list seats. The SNP aren't going to come anywhere near, because they're only going to have 20,000 votes for the purposes of that calculation. Wouldn't it make sense, therefore, for those who believe in independence, for those who believe that the Scottish Parliament should be full of people fighting for an independent Scotland, fighting against austerity, fighting against nuclear weapons, fighting against fracking, fighting for a higher standard and quality of life for all people in Scotland, wouldn't it make sense, if you're going to vote for independence, give the SNP your first vote, but don't waste your second vote. Don't waste your second vote. Give it to Solidarity. Give it to a party that's going to fight for independence. It's going to fight to raise the standard and quality of life of ordinary men, women and children across Scotland. Some people get angry with me, and I anticipate this. some people get angry with me when I make this point, that in us calling for the second vote, it is not a narrow political sectarian call, because what I'm saying is give Solidarity your second vote. But if for some reason you don't like us and you don't think that you want to give Solidarity your second vote, it doesn't change the fact that giving your second vote to the SNP is a waste. So give it to another pro-independence, anti-austerity party, whether that be the Greens or any other party. In other words, we're not making here a narrow political sectarian point about the second vote. We are addressing the fact that the electoral system is set up to ensure that the party that does well, first past the post, is not going to do well in the list section. So please don't waste your second vote. And I know there'll be all sorts of keyboard warriors out there who are making the point, no, you're wrong, Tommy. 1 and 2 SNP, 1 and 2 SNP. The truth of the matter is, and they may not like this, the truth of the matter is sometimes in life, causes are bigger than parties. We in Solidarity, in the run-up to the general election, we decided, and we took a lot of flack for it, we get attacked from several quarters, who I've got a lot of time and respect for on the left, socialists. We took a decision not to stand in the general election and instead to call for a vote for the SNP, because the cause of independence was bigger than our party. The cause of independence, when you've only got one vote, why stand and divide the independence vote? Why stand and divide the anti-austerity vote? We withdrew from the general election and called on people to back the SNP. Well, I've got to say to you, brothers and sisters, now you've got 2 votes. Now the cause is still bigger than the party. But the cause of independence is not served by giving both votes to the SNP. The cause of independence is served by voting 1 SNP, 2 Solidarity, or another pro-independence party. Please, let's try and get the message across there. Don't waste the second vote. Some people say, Tommy, you shouldn't just be calling for SNP supporters to give you the second. But what is it that you're standing for? Well, we've got loads that we're standing for. Number 1, and this is for those who believe in independence, number 1 in our manifesto is a commitment, if elected, that we will move a private member's bill to introduce Indy Ref 2 by 2018. That there should be another referendum at the latest by 2018. I hear these arguments all the time for people. We're not ready yet, Tommy. Can we not wait till the polls are showing a more consistent level of support for independence? You know what's wrong with that argument? What's wrong with that argument is the very people who are suffering most from Tory austerity and Tory cuts are the very people who can't wait. The people that are getting penalised on benefits. The people that are getting hunted and haunted because they happen to be disabled citizens. The people whose wages haven't been increased for the last 6 years in real terms. People who are trying to survive in a swamp of poverty and being buried underneath debt after debt. They can't wait. They can't wait. Some people within the movement might be a bit more comfortable, might be a bit more secure. Oh, let's just wait. Well, I'm afraid. I believe that the people we should be paying attention to are the most vulnerable in society, the poorest members of society, the low paid, the disabled citizens, those who are suffering most, particularly the children who face the prospect of living another 5, 6, 7 years under a right-wing reactionary Tory government. I think Indy Ref 2 has got to be on the cards by 2018 at the latest, and if elected to the Scottish Parliament, we give a commitment that we will raise a private member's bill to make that a reality. What else? We believe that there is now a commitment required, particularly from the SNP. I campaigned for the SNP to get elected last year, and I don't back down from that. I think it was the right thing to do. But one of the things that I campaigned for the SNP to do was oppose austerity. Now, I'm not into just words. Words are important, but words without action are empty rhetoric. And what the SNP said last year was vote for them and you're voting against austerity. Brothers and sisters, passing on the cuts from Westminster to Holyrood and then passing those cuts on to the 32 local authorities in Scotland is not opposing austerity, it's passing on austerity. What we need is a bit of steel now. What we need is a bit of defiance, not compliance with these austerity measures. Once you cut the home helps, once you cut the childcare provision, once you've cut the music lessons for the Waynes, very, very difficult to get it back. Very, very difficult to undo the damage that you've done to the fabric of the society at a local level. We need, therefore, the 32 local authorities in Scotland to unite with the Scottish Parliament and say loud and clear, we are passing no cuts budgets. We're not passing on these Tory austerity measures any longer. How dare they ask us to do that? When we're living in a society where they can have arrangements with the likes of Google. They can bring Google in for a wee cup of coffee. The bold George Osborne can sit down with Google and say, listen, we know you've not been paying your taxes, but instead of throwing the adverts at you that we do to those who are apparently claiming benefit and getting a wee shift in a local building site and the hairdressers, hunting them, haunting them, the way they do to apparent benefit cheats. No, that's no for Google. Have a wee seat. Listen, what do you think you can afford? Could you afford 130 million? Oh, that's great. Oh, brilliant. Let's announce that across the whole of the UK. We've got Google to pay £130 million tax. Only problem is, brothers and sisters, it's very, very difficult, by the way, to examine the accounts of Google because they set them up deliberately so that they appear in the Cayman Islands, so that they appear in Delaware, which is a non-tax state. When asked about that, the Google chief executive said, we don't have a problem with their tax avoidance measures. It's called capitalism. There you go, that's why we're anti-capitalist. But the profits that you can identify from Google in Britain over the last 12 months amounts to £7.2 billion. 7.2 billion. Do you know what the tax rate of 130 million amounts to for Google? 2.29%. 2.29%. Wouldn't that be wonderful, eh? If you were able to have a tax rate of only 2.29%. No, you've got your 20% basic rate. But Google can get away with 2.29%. Brothers and sisters, see when that type of criminal activity is taking place at the highest levels, how dare the Scottish Parliament pass on these cuts? They should be standing up and saying, united with the local authorities, this far, no further. No more cuts in jobs. No more cuts in services. It is time to defy the Tories. They have no democratic mandate to implement these cuts here in Scotland. Let's stand up and fight instead of punishing the poor in order to pay for the mistakes of the rich, because that's what austerity amounts to. So that's another reason you want to send Solidarity MSPs to Holyrood, so they'll stand up in the chamber and say no to the budget cuts, yes to a fight back, linking with the local authority trade unions, linking with the local authorities. Let's get Scotland up in arms against austerity. That's what the people voted for at the general election last year. We've also got other policies which I won't be able to go into detail because of the iron chair of my sister here, second on the list in Glasgow, who's told me that I've got very little time left. And when my sister tells me that, I tend to pay attention. I've learned that over years of experience. But we've got other policies. Like, instead of words of opposition to the unfair council tax, we've got a proposal to replace the unfair council tax. In the sessions of the Parliament so far, there has been only one proposal introduced as a bill to replace the council tax, and it was me that introduced it in 2006 to replace the unfair council tax with the Scottish service tax, which would tax individuals according to their ability to pay, with a £10,000 a year cut off, so that you don't have to fill in a complicated exemption form. If your income's less than £10,000 a year, you're automatically exempt. That would take on board over 80% of the pensioners in Scotland would become automatically exempt. What the service tax does do is it introduces levels of taxation, so that based on your income, the higher you earn, the more you pay. The reality is 77% of Scots would pay less under the service tax. 16% of Scots would pay more under the service tax. The rest would pay the same as they're paying just now. But the service tax would generate every single year £300 million more than the council tax generates, but it would generate it in a fairer fashion. That's the beauty of the service tax proposal. That's what we want to take into Holyrood. What else are we going to take into Holyrood?